you? Now, here's the plan today. We've got the squiz. Langs, on Friday, third big sports quiz. That's what we've got coming up. And what we're going to do today, we're really going to focus on how do we make the most of it. Now, Langs, it's been outrageous so far. Over 400 teams, loads and loads of people involved or watching. Top score, though. This is the bit I want to push you on. Top score, 39. And you were competing last time because you weren't presenting. Let's have the news. How was it?
Well, we had a great night, Dano. Just super full of banter, full of chat, drinks. It was a great night. Listen, we're coming good. We're coming better. 25.
Oh, reasonable.
Well, it's middle of the pack, isn't it? Middle of the pack. But do you know what's been fascinating for us, and we've enjoyed this, is that smaller competitions are going on, aren't they? So depending on where you live or depending on what sport you play, here's what's happening with us, that we reckon there are 5 other running clubs in Oxfordshire. And someone's just said to some of the guys, come on, join into the quiz here. So I'm in touch with 5 other boys who are doing this. Come and join, and let's see how we compete against other running clubs in Oxfordshire. Still middle of the pack, but we're going in the right direction. So we've really enjoyed it, Dan. It's been tops.
So are you champs of Oxfordshire then, Langs, or what?
No, middle of the pack still. Middle of the pack in the fight.
In Oxfordshire as well?
Yeah.
You're such a steady Eddie, son. You really are. No. Fair play to you. Now, how are we going to spend the next 20 odd minutes? We're going to unpack all kinds of issues around what Langs has just said. The main thing is we'll open the Bible and Langs will help us look at Romans 10 and see what is the absolute bedrock of our approach to sharing the good news of Jesus through this quiz. We're going to give you really practical tips on how to invite your teammates to come, how to engage them with the talk in the center of the quiz, and how to follow up beyond the quiz if your club or teammates have joined in and gladly come and enjoyed the quiz. And we've got a couple of questions that have been pinged in that we're going to address just before we close on a very practical level. Now, Langs, I'm going to hand over to you for Romans 10. Let me just frame it by saying, in this period, our pray, play, say has become pray, stay, say. All these years of Christians in sport, pray for your club and team. Play in a way that honors Christ on the field and in the changing room and in the bar afterwards. But we can't do that anymore. It has to be remote. So we now say stay. Stay in the lives of your teammates. And 6 or 7 weeks on, boy, you're staying in there now if your mates and coming to the quiz. It's the real deal. And then say. If you pray and you stay in your club's life and you say something about the good news of Jesus, that's the package. Friday night, saying something because you pray and stay in people's lives. Langs, can you earth this for us in what God has to say about saying things about Jesus, please?
Oh, Dano, listen, I'm a sports person. So are you. And I reckon as sports people, we like to keep it simple. Don't we? You know the instructions coming on off the bench if someone's kind of taking another place and anything complex from the coach, the manager, you're like, no, that's not going in. Just keep it simple. No, of course it's generic, isn't it? Of course I'm trying to group all of us sports people into one bracket, saying we like it simple. But I think there's some method in that madness. I do. And Paul, I think, here in Romans 10 is trying to be as simple as he can possibly be in helping his readers understand what salvation is and then what it looks like to gain salvation. Look, he talks about the place of salvation, the importance of being saved. It's simple. It's not complex, but it really matters that our sports friends hear it. So let's go. A simple salvation. This is what Romans 10 verses 11 through to 17 say. Let's split it into 3 different sections. A simple salvation. Here's what Paul says. As scripture says, anyone who believes in him will never be put to shame, for there is no difference between Jew and Gentile. The same Lord is Lord of all and richly blesses all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Do you see that? Anyone who believes, and everyone who calls, anyone and everyone who believes and calls. They'll never be shamed and will be saved. Now, Paul is not saying, he does not mean that a spoken word merits justification in and of itself. He's not saying that. But he's saying that a word, whoever calls on the name of the Lord, then there's outward evidence of inward faith. Jew, Gentile, no difference. Anyone, everyone. There really is no difference. There's no other way of getting to God. Believe and call. It's so simple. You realize your need for forgiveness, the consequence of your sin, and you believe that God can save you. It really is that simple. Think now of the time that you did that. You recognize your need of forgiveness, and you realized and believed that it was God that could save you through the work of Jesus. It's a simple salvation. I have a friend from the running club, and he'd been to 2 sports quizzes, live sports quizzes that we held in the rugby club every year that we do here in Bicester. And after the second sports quiz, I was able to say, Andrew, come on, fancy curry, and to talk a little bit more of the Christian faith. And so we went. He agreed, quite happy to. He wanted to talk about it. And the conversation went, and he said, yes, Lanks, I've got a faith. I believe in God. And I thought, cool, we're going somewhere. We're getting somewhere here. This is good. This is a good conversation. And then I asked him a simple question. Andrew, do you think you have a saving faith, a faith that saves you in what you put your faith in? And he looked at me blank. What do you mean saving faith? This is what Paul is talking about. Many people say there's a God. Many people believe in God, have a faith in God. But actually to have saving faith is what is absolutely crucial. And so Paul is saying, look, it's a simple salvation. Look what he says next in verses 14 and 15. He says there are simple stages of salvation. Follow this. He asks 4 rhetorical questions. They flow logically. See, let's pull them out. How then can sports people, our sports friends, call on the one they have not believed in? How can our sports friends believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can our sports friends hear without someone preaching to them? How can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. You see those questions? They come one after the other. Quite simple. How can they call if they've not believed? How can they believe if they have not heard? How can they hear without someone telling them what the good news of Jesus is? And how can anyone tell them unless they are sent? And he then goes into quote a verse from Isaiah 52. How beautiful are the feet. And here's a reference back to a time when people brought the message to God's people who were in captive. This was the message that you will be released from your captivity. And so Paul is saying, look what the good news of Jesus is saying. Here you can be released from sin. How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Oh, look, quite a few years back, Christians in Sport, we had a girls' football tour. They went to South Africa, I think. And some of the staff at Christians in Sport at that time were on the tour. They were playing in the football team, and off they went. And they called themselves Beautiful Feet. Now, you can imagine there was a bit of banter in the office because actually with the flip-flops that were worn, they weren't that beautiful, the feet that some of these girl footballers had. But they called themselves Beautiful Feet because off they were going to South Africa to send a message, to give a message, to teach a message to people, other sports people, to be released from sin, captivity that they were in. Hey, the good news of Jesus releases you from sin. And Paul says, here are 4 simple stages of people, sports friends. How can they call and believe if they have not? And here's the stages. And so it's great that we're going into Friday thinking about some of these stages, thinking about the simple stages of salvation, thinking about the simple salvation. And thirdly, finally, here's what Paul summarizes. It's a simple summary of salvation. There's nothing complex about this. Verses 16, 17. But not all the Israelites accepted the good news. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our message? Consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. Paul doesn't need to tell you or me that some don't hear, that some don't trust, that some don't believe the message. We know that in our sports clubs and teams. Of course, we know that. But look what he says in verse 17. Look what he says is a summary of salvation. Look, faith comes from hearing the message. Hearing beautiful news is essential for salvation. Yes, it is. But hearing it is not enough. They must trust. They must believe. But faith and trust comes from hearing the explicit gospel message. And we understand what our part is. And Friday evening, the sports quiz is all about playing our part, where we'll have fun and banter and chat, but there'll be an opportunity to hear something about the explicit gospel message. And Paul says, what is the explicit gospel message? Again, because it's so simple. Look, the word about Christ, about Jesus crucified, and about Jesus rising from the dead. Savior and Lord. Paul is urging us, don't give up doing that. Don't give up sharing the good news of Jesus. And we've got a great opportunity, again, the third sports quiz, to get our friends along, to hear something of the good news of Jesus. And then we pray that they would believe it, that they would trust in it. So, Dano, come on. With the sports quiz looming on Friday, how are we going to do it?
Let's get really practical. Lance, thank you very much indeed for pointing us in the direction of practical conversation. Let me welcome Becky Dawson, who plays touch. She leads the Exeter University Christians in Sport group, and Mike Harris, who's a rugby player at Old Red Cliffians Rugby Football Club. Welcome, Becky. Welcome, Mike. Great to have you with us. Mike, delightful haircut you've managed to get there on lockdown.
Thanks, Dano. Good job from the wife, but sadly I tried to touch it up a bit at the end myself and I made a few errors trying to hide them with my body angle.
There's absolutely no way I should be having banter about haircuts. That's for certain. Becky, great to have you with us also. I'm going to start with you, Becky. You've had friends. You and another colleague invited some friends to the quiz last time around. Let's focus on before, during, and after the quiz. Let's get really practical. Becky, before the quiz, what are the top tips from your experience so far of inviting people to come to our quiz?
Thanks, Anna. I think two main follow the pray, stay parts. The first is just pray really, really hard because it's God who's going to do the works. So get a message, draft it before, look through it, pray before sending it. And then what I tend to do, I tend to send it individually to my mates rather than on a big group chat because I find that normally gets better responses. And I try to beforehand ask them a few questions about how they're doing and have conversations in the week leading up to the quiz so that naturally on the Thursday or Wednesday, I can invite them out of a conversation, not out of the blue, like, are you free on Friday? Come hear about Jesus and do a sports quiz. And then I find it's a lot more natural. They think, oh, she's really invested in me as a friend, as a person. She cares about what I've been doing during the week. And then tend to get their responses that way.
Okay, very helpful. Mike, does that resonate with you? Talk us into your approach.
Yeah, I think so, Dana. I think, as Becky said, it's naturally, if you're bothered about people and you're honest and open with them about faith and life all the way through, then actually they tend to respond better. So I think one of the things that I found tricky, particularly about the lockdown situation, is that our normal interactions, a lot of them are based around training and matches. And actually there wasn't much sort of banter in the WhatsApp group and things like that going on. And that's been one of the things I found hardest actually about maintaining those relationships generally. And so it's been trying to shoot the boys the odd message, the odd phone call here or there. We actually got together and did a quiz that I tried to pull together the week before the first quiz. So it was apart. So we actually spent a bit of time with some of them. And I found that the guys who came to that have actually been then the most open to continuing to come to the other sports quizzes. And like Becky said, it's a bit of send the odd message, follow up. And I think just be totally honest and open about why you want them to come. That's been a real help, I think.
Very helpful, Mike. Well, let me stick with you on the next stage then. We've had a couple of, a number of people saying, tricky really. If you're at an event, there's an expectation that there's a bit of silence to listen to a talk in the middle of the quiz. Obviously, nothing like that exists when it's remote and online. Has that been tricky? And if so, how have you made marginal gains in it, inviting your mates to actually listen into the talk in the centre?
Yeah, I think, like you say, that is trickier. Two things that I think I found have helped. One has been just trying to be really clear in my invitation to people that there is a talk, and actually I really want them to hear it because it'll give an opportunity to think about the big questions of life, about Christian faith, and it'll be something that I think will interest them, which means when we've got to the talk stage, then if people haven't quite clocked that the talk's happening, then for me to go, oh guys, here's the talk now, and they know that I want them to be there to listen to that talk. I think that's been one helpful thing. The other more practical thing, which I don't know if it works for everybody, but I've kind of I've used Zoom to gather my team together, and instead of us all watching the quiz on different devices, I've actually shared my YouTube stream through Zoom, so we're all kind of watching together. So it feels more natural that when there's conversation going on during the quiz, the questions are being asked, or the talk's happening, that we're quiet, and when there's gaps, we're talking. And I found that's been quite helpful to help people kind of clue into the talk as well. Those would be the two things.
All right, thanks, Mike. Very good. Becky, I see you nodding quite a lot there when Mike's speaking. Tell us about your experience last time of managing that part of the quiz.
Yeah, I did very similar stuff to Mike. Just, I think, real clarity before that there's going to be a short talk, that's something that you really want them to hear. And then just practically, sharing screen, saying, everyone, let's just mute ourselves for the next 10 minutes. And also in my invite saying it'd be fun if we could stay on a bit longer and perhaps chat about the talk. And then there's that invitation to, after quiz, that rather than just being like, okay, bye, to hang around, ask questions and further that chat if people want to.
Very helpful. Pick us up there then, because you've pointed us towards the end of the talk actually. So you've set up a mechanism for simple options to listen in and to discuss it and to stay on. How have you navigated the end of the quiz and next steps? Give us an insight into that, Becky, before I take that to Mike.
Thanks. So we just stayed on our Zoom call and kind of chatted about lockdown life in general, caught up, had a bit of banter. And then at one point I was just like, guys, with that guy Daniel was talking about the perfect substitute, what do you make of that? And kind of just threw a question out there to try and get a few thoughts gained. And in that environment, it was actually quite hard. People didn't really want to bite. Conversation was just more difficult in that kind of group setting. People didn't want to talk. But I found after the quiz, messaging some people individually, phoning people up and catching up, being like, oh, what did you make of this? Had better responses, I think.
Okay, helpful. Mike, perhaps you can round us off then as we draw this part of our program to a close. I know somebody came to online church with you as a result of the quiz. What would you add to Becky's and navigate that story for us, how that happened briefly, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, I really like what Becky's said there in terms of setting the expectation to talk after. I found that really difficult, but there was one or two guys who were just a bit warmer. I know I've had a little bit of conversation with them before. And so it was simply saying to them, we've got a series starting at church, which I think you'll find really interesting, following on from the other talks that you've heard. Would you like to tune in? And amazingly, well, he got back and said, yeah, I'll watch that later on. So yet to find out how he found it, but it's just, I suppose, seeing who's warm, even in those small interactions afterwards, and then being willing to ask the question. I think people are more open than we think to that.
Well, terrific. Mike and Becky, really very helpful indeed. And thanks for your time, and wish you the best for Friday. Excellent. Well, Lags, that was really interesting, wasn't it? Top tips. Let's build on that, shall we?
Yeah. Yeah, great, interesting conversation with Becky and Mike. I thought it was super helpful in what they were saying. Dan, before we talked about this, I was chatting to you a little bit in terms of the invitation, because that's a big deal for some of us still. How do we actually invite our sports friends to come to a Christians in Sport online quiz where there is going to be a talk in there? So, and you had a couple of, I think, really helpful top tips, some helpful points. Flesh those out for us, if you would. How do we do this inviting in a very kind of normal, natural, but quite intentional way?
Yeah, well, I think we've had two living, breathing examples of what you taught us from Romans 10 and what you just asked me. Just be normal. I mean, you saw those two, Becky and Mike. You know that at their club, they'll just be a real good egg to be at the club. And you see the way they talk. There's a quiz, there'll be a talk in the middle. Would love you to come, love you to listen. What did you make of it? You do that all the time in everyday life, all the time. We find common ground for conversation and we just chat. I think we just have to tell ourselves that there's nothing. I mean, you really do have to tell yourself this. Weird as it is, there's nothing abnormal about being fully committed to faith in God through Jesus Christ as a sportswoman or a sportsman and saying something about that at your club. It's absolutely natural, and nobody thinks you're being weird. This is the strange thing, but you. Nobody thinks it's weird, but you do sometimes. And we've got to stop that. It's as simple as that. Stop doing that. That's, Lance, I'm telling you, stop doing that. That's wrong. That's my first tip. I don't know what you make of that. And maybe you can explain it better than me.
It's good, isn't it? Because with my mates, with my boys, I still think that that's the elephant in the room. Them coming to terms with what I believe. And so it's always weird for me. And we use the term, don't we, like with knees knocking, we invite people. But yet, I can't get over that that's naturally how I feel when I invite someone to a Christian event. But you're saying it's not weird if you put the shoe on the other foot, our friend's foot. They don't think that's weird at all.
No, and look, I have to tell you what I think to myself. I think to myself, how strange not to believe in God.
Yeah, that's
what I think. I think, gosh, how strange that people don't believe in God. Is that weird? Instead of thinking, am I weird to believe in God? Because God exists. So it's strange not to believe in God. Even that can change your mindset. It can change your mindset in discussion.
Very good. Very good. Listen, you always use a phrase, you have done for quite a while, don't negotiate. People that have been involved in clubhouses will have heard you and heard Christians in Sport use that. Is there anything to be said on don't negotiate for the decisions that our friends make?
Well, it's the flip side of be good at being normal. You don't negotiate conversations about anything. You sit in the bar after a game and somebody talks about their auntie or something that's going on in Scotland when they last went there, or something that they're doing with their house. You follow a conversation, and when there's a natural end to the conversation, you start a new one. And if that stops quickly, you start a new one. That's how life works. So for me, it's straightforward. Don't negotiate asking somebody to come to the quiz. If they say no, you say, okay, fancy it if it's in 2 weeks, after another 2 weeks? Not really, mate. No. Okay, no problem. You spoken to your children recently? Choom, off you go. Just don't negotiate the conversation. You're not in charge of people's lives. So don't say to them, I'm not going to ask you because you won't be interested. That's nonsense. That's my opinion. It's nonsense. Just be normal about this and let people decide for themselves. Sorry, I feel a bit aggressive.
It's a little bit then, yeah. But
I know.
come on, we've got a couple of questions, haven't we, that people have asked in setup to this. Here's the first one. My mates keep chatting throughout the talk. This is real, obviously real time. Obviously, this wouldn't be the case in person. Any tips for doing this when online? Let me take this one. I think what Mike was really helpful at saying, it was that in his Zoom gathering, then they watch it all on Zoom, and then he shares the screen, and then they chat, or then they're quiet at certain times. So it was easier for Mike to be able then to mute all when the talk was on, and he's already said that in advance. He said there will be a talk. I'm going to mute us all just so we can focus in on the talk. For some, that might really work. It might be really helpful. For others, of course, you just think, well, there's no way I can control it in such a way. And then you just respect the choice as well, because even if you mute it, someone might disappear from the room, of course, or someone might be chatting to others in their own room, and that's no problem. So you obviously respect the choice of your teammates before you, but there are maybe just one or two things that we can do, but it's all preparation in advance and helping people see what we will be doing, and it really might work for you, that just saying, guys, at this point we're just going to mute so we can listen, pay attention, then we'll go again with the chat. So maybe that's a good top tip to go with.
Yeah, that's a really good top tip. There's something there, Lanx, about the balance of respecting your friends, colleagues who you've invited, but being dead normal and saying, you know, I told you there's a talk in the minute, I'd like you to listen. I'm just going to mute just now. If you're not going to listen, no problem, off you go. But you just treat people with respect, don't you?
Yeah, I love that.
And do that. Very good. And I think that came through in the interviews as well. And what's the second thought, Lanx? Yeah,
go on. You take this one, Dana. What would you do with your friends after the talk? Most of my teammates dive off us quickly.
Yeah, I think there's a few things we've captured there. I think you're speaking at the quiz. We'll put a question up, won't we? We always put a question up with a talk to say, here's a question to have a conversation about, and that goes on the screen. So you know there's a question that you can say to your pals, we're going to have a chat. 2, where we heard it from Becky, she says to her friends, perhaps we stay on for a bit later to have a chat about it. Again, you respect people. They say, no, I'm going to push off. You say, if anyone wants to stay and chat, we can chat about the question. But I think the best work definitely happens afterwards. So I think this is all about staying in the room, hanging out with your mates, looking out for them, asking them questions, and being good at being normal and not negotiating. If they don't want to talk about it, they'll let them say so. Last top tip, I think, we always put on the screen, I just made sure I get it right here, christiansinsport.org.uk/more. That's a link that I'd send to people after the quiz, and I'd send them the talk that we put on social media, the talk that's in the middle. I'll pass that on to my friends as well. So a lot of the work happens afterwards, and you treat people with respect if they want to talk immediately after the quiz. I think that's the balancing act. So I hope that helps with some of the key questions that have been asked. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground here, Lanx.
Yeah, like that, Dano. Okay, before Friday comes, we've got Wednesday, which is the prayer gathering. If you haven't been to one of these, do please come. Really encouraging time. 45 minutes, quick, sharp, snappy. We pray together, 3 different sections. And it's been super time. So this Wednesday, 7 a.m. to 7:45 or 12:30. Do the lunchtime slot if that's too early for you. 12:30 to 12:45. Really, really useful. And then, of course, this Friday the 15th of May, 8 p.m., the big online sports quiz, our 3rd one. So do try and get a team to that. All at christiansinsport.org.uk/pray, stay, say.
Like you sure?
I haven't got a clue what that is. There it is. Look, top left-hand corner. Don't say my word for it. Check it out.
Hey, it's been Lags Top Man. Thanks for taking us through Romans 10. Thanks to Becky and Mike for being excellent guests. Thanks to you for making time to watch this. But all to one end, eh? Pray, stay, say. Let's stay in the lives of our clubs and teams. Let's make the world of sport a better place. And let's make sure that there's clarity on who is the one who transforms the world of sport for good. We look forward to seeing you at the Big Sports Quiz on Friday. Get amongst it and we look forward to seeing you then. Go well. Cheers.
Cheerio.